welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Abarca with Andy Lipson, and our guest here, Donna S. Miss S.
Salonga.
Salonga. That was a cut right there. You see, that's how casual this is.
I like it.
So anyhow, today we'll be discussing the Oakland teacher strikes because they have recently settled. Mm-hmm. It is now, it was last weekend that they had settled. So we have a teacher with us here from Skyline and its school, and we will have that discussion. Andy, if you want to introduce Donna.
I asked Donna to come and speak on our podcast, YouTube channel, whatever you want to call it. For one reason is because she was an Oakland teacher who voted no on the recent agreement, and I think there was a lot of reason to do that, and I want that reason to get out there. 42% of the people, of your colleagues, agreed with the no vote, as I understand, right? Is that the number in terms of the percentage?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss as to what the percentage is, but
I think it was about 42% voted no, if I remember right.
yeah, that's pretty close.
Okay. But honestly, the biggest reason that I asked Donna to do this, and she's going to talk about that vote and what her feelings are about it and what's happened since the vote. But I went to I'm from Mission High School, and my school adopted Skyline High School, and a few of us went to the picket lines. I went twice, and I have never seen a person. She's a picket captain, and she led that picket out there. And I personally have never seen a person who was as dynamic, as open to people, as take charge, but give ground. And it was really inspiring to see you do that. We talk a lot about the working class, about socialism, and Eduardo and people rightfully have doubts about the working class can't take power and things like that because people are just stuck in the mud, and how are who are going to lead this? But you want to know the people who are going to lead this is going to be people like that, like Donna. I mean, I honestly feel like these are the sorts of leaders that are out there. I don't think they even know they're out there sometimes. And her ability to be a glue for people and a glue for that picket line, for the students, for parents, but also to take charge, but also to let other people lead. It was just amazing to watch. And it was inspirational for me. So I'm honored to have you here. And
I'm very interested in knowing more about
so yeah, and when Donna, we talked about this, you wanted to talk about that, your journey here as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I have heard Andy raves about you, so now this is the time for me to get to know you. And for our listeners as well, because I think that you are of that percentage that voted no, and overwhelmingly, well, not overwhelmingly, the majority voted yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
For so, so can you give us background info as a teacher, as your just some intro about who you are as a person?
So I am a third-year teacher at Skyline High School, and I teach ceramics. The journey to Oakland was an interesting one. Like I had a really hard time my first year teaching. I've not known any other high school aside from student teaching in San Francisco. So my background in teaching was very little, prior to teaching in Skyline. And it was really hard. It was like really, I struggled a lot because I had big shoes to fill, and I had a pressure on me because I taught ceramics, and ceramics was a very popular subject. But what I did notice is that I really did well with the students in the sense of building relationships with them and getting to know them as students. I mean, the main thing that I do in my classroom in the very beginning as a teacher is community building and getting to know them and building the trust. And that part of it is pretty scary because you don't know what's going to happen. You tend to find that students, for whatever reason, stop attending class, and then you kind of feel abandoned. Like it goes both ways. It really goes both ways. And so as a teacher, I focus more on social emotional learning and restorative justice practices, where we talk a lot, we build up a relationship. So if there's any issues that come up, if there's any sort of arguments or altercations or confrontations, we first have that positive relationship. Then if there's any sort of altercation, like I said, or confrontation, we try our best as both, like, you know, the student and myself, hopefully the student, but I am the adult in the situation, so I try to breathe myself out of getting very upset with a student if they get mad at me. And I think that's also what's important in the picket too. But like teaching, I didn't obviously find that out until I picketed. But yeah, the relationships that I have with my students matter the most in my classroom.
Did you have any background as an activist before this? Union activist or activist around anything?
No, no, not at all. I mean, there are things like, and you can totally cut this part of me being like, there was me saying to my family all the time, oh wow, I was pretty, I think mentally, like I was, and morally I was, but I've never actually done anything aside from saying to my family, well, I'm not going to eat meat anymore for this time, and having a lot of pushback and being like, oh, well, I was like a teenager. I was like growing up being like, meat is terrible for you. And I don't eat that much meat now, but that was the only thing that was going on in my life that I was like, oh, you know, being a vegetarian, animal rights. I did like call ACC a lot when I was living.
What's ACC?
Animal Care Control, when I was living in Pacifica. And like, cause I would see dogs and like, this is a really weird thing to bring up, because I did not realize that this has been
we ramble
something.
A lot today.
Oh my god, this is something.
This is every.
This is
Join the rambling session.
Wow,
The last teacher gave us a history of his Italian background.
Oh, you mean my coworker?
That's right, Jimmy. Yes.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, wow, very much animal rights. I've always been like for animal rights. I wanted to be a veterinarian before I became a teacher, and I just couldn't handle the emotional, like, of having a cat die, because I like saved a cat, not even saved it obviously because it died, but I was on the street with another person trying to save a cat that had gotten hit by a car, and you know, being a vegetarian for a certain amount of time was something of me saying, this is my right. And I did have to defend that a lot when it came to family. Yeah, and as I was driving here, I remembered when I was in Bolivia, and I didn't do any activism work. I was just there to volunteer in a small little town, but they ended up having bus strikes. And they literally would put the buses in the intersections of like every street corner. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like it kind of just brought that back for me to drive here and be like, wow, this is how they shut it down, you know? And I think me coming from that smaller point of view, that perspective that I completely forgot about, makes me realize that I've always had that power, and now I'm just sort of inspiring. At least I'm hoping I'm inspiring others for it.
And can you say a little bit about that journey from being that classroom teacher to the picket captain that I saw? Like, what was that like? What was that I assume that's a transformation, but I don't know.
It all really started with the fact that I was a teacher. I mean, you know, that for the first 2 years, I was just trying to figure out my classroom. I was trying to figure out also student voice, because that's something that I was taught at San Francisco State. Your students have a voice, and it's especially important in art, where they should have a reason they are doing their art. And that was something that I hold dear to me, because I am an artist myself. So that's self-expression, but also with self-expression comes your values, your desires of like what people should know about you, or where you stand on a certain topic or statement, or issue. And so it's basically started with me trying to find their voice in art, and then having Harley, who is actually the picket captain. I'm
Okay.
not actually the picket captain.
Okay.
I'm the backup.
Oh,
Harley
okay.
and I are a pair in that sense. And he's very much more like logistics and like analytical, and I'm very much more like emotional. And I try and read the room, as we say. I realized, like, whenever I was talking about reading the room, the picket line had no room because it's outside. You know, reading the environment.
Right.
But yeah, it was because of student voice and the desire to raise that up. And that's another thing to talk about with Harley and I, is that Harley is external. He handled more of the external communications. I'm sorry, excuse me. He was internal and I was external. So my role was actually communication with the community, parent and guardian engagement and student engagement. And I organically fell into that. That was not something that was assigned to me. I just knew that's what we had to do to make things work. And so I stepped up and was telling my students all of these things, like Red for Ed. It started with Red for Ed, and I just contacted a bunch of teachers. I contacted my students the next day by like seeing them and wearing all red and like making them do Red for Ed. Like it wasn't like wear red, damn it. It was hashtag Red for Ed, and then we chose a date, and that was the date prior to a teacher sick out. So I made sure that not only was it their participation in it, but also their knowledge in it. I kind of went rogue in the sense where, in a way, it was not legal. It's considered illegal for me to have organized students. But the reality is that I wasn't organizing them. I wasn't telling them what to do. I just made them aware.
You were educating them.
Yeah, and the like hashtag Red for Ed wasn't like y'all need to wear red, you know, it's up to you. I always told them that it is always up to you. You have your choices. So originally it was to be the external communication towards parents and teachers. Why I keep saying teachers? Sorry, parents and guardians and students to know that we were doing a sick out. And then I started realizing that students wanted to actually join us. So on that Friday of our, I don't even know if it was a Friday anymore. The January 18th was the day that we did a sick out. I think it was a Friday. And students were there. Students took pictures with me. I created an Instagram. And I also got in trouble for that Instagram.
Why is that?
Because a parent started calling the school and were telling them that, hey, there's no school on Friday, right? And my gosh, the principal had no idea that Instagram existed and was like, what is happening? Who is this person? We're going to shut it down. And then I had approached my principal saying, oh yeah, I just letting you know, on the like, because I'm very communicative and I try my best to keep them updated as to what's going on, that this is happening and that's happening. I'm really bad at this chronological timeline because it's been a long time. But we had teach-ins for students after the teacher sick out, because then the students wanted to do a student sick out. Yeah. So our timeline, I've always tried my best to keep the admin also in communication. So I think that's really important to mention. And that's also why I got the information of them telling me like, oh, we're about to shut that down, because I was announcing the teacher sick out on that Instagram. I wanted to use it as a communication, and it made me realize how much it needs to, they want to control it, to control obviously the students' attendance, because that is in relationship to the money that the district receives. But it is also tricky because from what we were told that during our teacher sick out that students were marked present. And that in itself is also illegal.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was the main reason of like starting everything, was just to keep students in the know and be educated as to why their teachers were doing things and what power they have.
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit taken aback by this Instagram thing. Like, I'm trying to figure out, because we live in a new era of digital age, and it seems the lines are blurred as to, okay, so we are transitioning into this technological age, what teachers are allowed to do and not allowed to do. So I was just thinking about that. What in this process, what have you learned about what it means to be a leader for yourself? How has that developed for yourself?
It's interesting because it still takes me to the role of being a teacher, and it still takes me into the role of being protective. I think that has been really an interesting concept. When I'm a teacher, I want to protect my students, but it's also the idea of not being overbearing and being controlling. So there's a balance. And when I was on the picket line, there's also the balance of protecting the teachers, but also allowing, it's kind of hard to explain, because it's not like I'm trying to protect them as in, like with the students, like being an adult ally or something. There's something about personalities and dynamics that I tried to kind of protect people from. For example, the idea of harassment on the picket line, right? And then in the classroom, there's like the students will of course harass each other, and then they'll be like, we're just messing around. But for me, and the protection of students is like more external things coming in than anything else. On the picket, it was more like internal adult relationships or adult interactions that I was like, oh no, this is really bad. Is it okay if I give an example?
Sure.
There was an instance where I have no idea at this point. I was off doing something else originally, and then I realized some like boisterous, like loud, obnoxious, like stuff was going on the left-hand side of our picket line. And so if you're looking at the gate where people have to enter through, like for cars, it would be on the right side, and someone was trying to either turn into our picket, either they were turning right or they had turned, I have no idea anymore. I was just noticing there is some loud noises going on, someone's yelling, and I went over and I had to actually like run to it, and I had to kind of assess what was going on, but I stood right in the middle of a pickup truck, a cop, my admin, now at this point 3 admin, including our 2, so it was an assistant principal and 2, like it sucked because you can tell that it was just getting escalated, because originally it was 1 admin and 1 principal, and then all of a sudden you see the other principal coming up, so we have 2, and I was like, great, this is terrible right now. One of the picketers like was trying to talk to the person in the pickup truck, but then everyone was just like yelling at each other. Then the picketers behind us got really loud and were like, don't cross the line, don't cross the line. And I just literally stood there next to at this point I had backed away and got closer to the people in the car. And you can tell they're like complete confusion, but it was so escalated. The energy was so bombarding and overwhelming and negative that I had to kind of breathe, and like everything. I don't know if y'all ever get that, where it's so loud and so overwhelming that your ears sort of block everything out, but you hear it in the background and you're just like stuck. You're like, what do I do? And you're thinking, even though you're like, I need to think of this now, I need to know what to do now. And I noticed the only voices that were really clear to me were in Spanish, and the people in the pickup truck were speaking Spanish to each other. It was I can't remember, it was a male driver and a female passenger. And I said at that point, I was like, with my broken Spanish, I was like, por favor, sígame. And I then started like waving my arm to say, go this way, away from the gate. And I think they could tell I wasn't yelling. I just calmly said, please follow me. And I said something about driving, which would be like manejar. I don't know. I just, with my broken Spanish, the best as I could, I was like, I'm going to explain to you.
Conducir.
Yeah, I was just like, please, what is manejar then?
Manage.
Oh, whoopsies.
That's all right.
Well, I tried to get them, and I successfully did, so I said something correct. And it blew my mind, like, the idea of communication, the idea of, like, my body language changing, and my placement of my body. Because there's been times where, yes, I've almost gotten hit by a car. Oh, you saw that? I can't remember anymore.
Yeah.
Was it between the yellow bus and someone else?
Right.
Yeah, and I was pretty quick. I was very aware, and I'm very visual, and so I'm very aware, and I try my best to like quickly get in the way of things. Like whenever the picket line opened, I immediately was like, I'm in front now, I'm in the middle, just so that I can remind people to just come on back, like it's okay.
Right.
And it's just a crazy idea that your emotions get so heavy and so quick to do something negative on a picket because your assumption is that these people have bad intention or something bad is going to happen. And a lot of that is understandable. But for me, I came in trying my best to calm the whole thing down, whatever it may be, because there's been more than once. So I've tried multiple times on that picket to come in with a very calm body language and not any sort of escalating tactics. I'm more de-escalating.
May I ask you, how did you come to your decision of joining the picket line? Did you have at the school some conversations about the strike, and how did you all of it come to decide together collectively to join the picket line? Because you came to have a leadership role, yes, and how was that decided amongst your colleagues, or how did you, or even before that, even before I even get there, how did you all organize to discuss this conversation about organizing yourselves to strike? Did you initially say, yes, I'm going to strike, I will join you, or the conversation was ruminating about the entire district, no? And were you on board already? Did you hear about the gossip? LA had happened. Oakland they were discussing it. Whispers of a strike was being thought out. Were you part of those whispers? Were you part of that? Maybe we should take that as well. We should do this strike just like LA, or were you reluctant, or did you? What was your experience initially, a little bit before the strike began?
Yeah, I was
Do you understand,
I was so reluctant. I was so afraid, actually, because I think it was Ojai. Yeah, Ojai did. Ojai. Oakland High School. Oakland High School did a wildcat strike, or wildcat sick out. Thank you, because that gets people kind of confused. It's a wildcat sick out, and it's funny because it was on my birthday. It was on December 11th that they had done it, and it was December 10th. Doesn't matter. Sometime
close to
in December. Yeah, sometime
before
in
the
December.
winter break.
Yes, definitely before winter break. And it was like I totally had no idea they were doing that. I had taken that same day that they did the wildcat sick out off. And I had someone text me and say, Did you take the day off to be in solidarity with Ojai? And I was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And then I came, I want to say it was the weekend after, or maybe 2 weeks after. I was leaving the parking lot to go into school that morning, and Harley approached me And it was so weird because that weekend my brother and I were watching the France the yellow vest
yeah.
protests, and I was just like,
Who approached you?
Well, Harley is the picket line captain,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm like the backup. And he approached me on Monday.
Before you became the backup. Yes.
Yeah, I had no idea. I totally. This was like 2 weeks after that Wildcat sick out, and me watching the France the yellow vest protest, being like, ugh, like I don't like my district. Like I don't like what's going on. I mean, I'll touch on something else later, but I thought that it was a bad idea what they did. I literally was like, what?
Who would-
Oh, hi.
All right.
For doing the Wildcat strike, sick out. Damn it, sorry.
No,
I just get so excited that I can't. Like,
You thought it was a bad idea.
I thought it was terrible. I was like, why would they do that to the students? That's mean. And like, I felt like they abandoned them. And I had no idea the point of it. And Harley explained to me what was going on.
Another teacher.
And Harley is another teacher. Harley is a history teacher at Skyline. And I just remember being like, I guess that's okay what they did when he walked out of my classroom. But it made me realize that withholding labor is exactly what we had to do. And that's when that's when what Harley told me started making a lot more sense as time went on, when I saw it in my students that we were suffering. Like I didn't have clay for the beginning of my second semester.
For a teacher that is doing ceramics.
Yeah, like I had clay, but I had to make sure it was like rationing. Like if I didn't ration properly, I was going to get screwed over, and I wouldn't have a curriculum, and we wouldn't be able to make the mugs that we did. And
so lack of resources.
Yeah, the lack of resources. Like I knew that was already coming up in my life, but like once January hit, I was like, this is definitely bad. Like and that's the reason why I said I would touch on this later. But when I left for winter break, I went to New York, and I was telling my really good friend that I don't know if I want to stay at this district. I don't even know if I want to stay in California, because like I was born and raised in San Francisco, and I was just like really worried that the stress of not knowing how to provide for my students, which is the core of my class, not having clay, was scary, because I couldn't sleep at night. Like there's just so much stress. It sounds really silly and dumb, because it's like, well, it's just clay, but that is the core of my classroom.
Was it also class sizes?
I mean, that does touch on that, because we just don't have enough supplies.
Yeah.
You know, and honestly, I want all of my kids to be there. Whenever we start school, like for the whole year, and I got like 36 on my roster, each and every kid is like such a sweetheart, and they, you know, some of them are like, maybe I'll want to be here, but the community building that we have, you know, makes them want to stay, and makes me wish they could stay. But 36 students is massive. I have space for 32, but our supplies were dwindling for come the second semester, in the sense of clay and glaze. That's something that is, I can't replace. I mean, you know, I can recycle clay as fast as I can, but they put out more than I can. They put out more than I can like put back in when I recycle.
The cost of living has risen over the past 5 years to 14%. Do you live here in the Bay Area? You said you're a native San Franciscan.
Yeah.
How do you manage to survive on a teacher salary?
I live with my parents.
This is actually very common for many people nowadays.
Yeah.
It's not actually, people are moving in with their parents. Yeah.
I was living in Oakland for part of my first year, and then I went back home, lived with my parents for the summer, and then I moved back for my second year in hopes that I can live in the community that I teach in. And I was super excited because I really love Oakland and I wanted to experience like more of the nightlife and like, you know, all those things. But what I was mainly doing was going home, cooking dinner because I couldn't really afford like going out. But I mean, I love that too. It was fun, but it was very much like must, of course, budget, right? I was spending more, almost pretty much like half of my monthly wage to live in Oakland. And I couldn't do it anymore. I knew that for my second year I wanted to finish it off in Oakland. My second year teaching, finish it off in Oakland. And unfortunately my mom was diagnosed with cancer. My second year of teaching, which was just last year. She's doing great, she's doing well now, but at the time we weren't sure. And so it kind of fell into place that I moved right back in July of this year. And I took care of her, and I mean, it just worked out. I was hesitant as well. I was like, ugh. But you know, I've now learned to just let things sort of sit much longer in order to really realize like what I should do. Kind of have to wait on certain decisions. So that was, like I said, the same with Harley. It's like when Harley left my classroom, you know, it made me realize that there are a lot of things that we can change. Maybe one day I'll come back to Oakland, you know, to live there, and I can change that by striking for a better wage. I could also at the same time have the desire to get more resources for my classroom by striking, right? So that meant a lot to me. The kids mean a lot to me.
Yeah. And coming back to your experience striking, you struck for 6 days, and you and Harley shared the picket captain weight. What would you say was most rewarding about that experience? And maybe also, it sounds like the challenge might have been the stress or something like that, but can you speak to what was best about it and maybe what was most challenging?
Yeah, I think the best was the social aspect of being with teachers that you never really, I mean, I shouldn't say never because I see them, but you don't necessarily get to see on a daily basis. And teaching is very isolating. At least most of the teachers that I spoke to at Skyline High School sometimes don't leave their classroom unless they're collaborating with the teachers that they are supposed to.
Right.
But aside from that, you know, you don't go by and say hi and visit and just have that social experience because you work so closely with your kids, but then with adults, you know, you don't have that same relationship. You can't just pop into the classroom. Everyone has like 50 things to do on their to-do list. And the social aspect of it was really an amazing experience on the picket line to get to know my coworkers.
And anything other than that you described, some of those stressful moments where you had to keep calm, anything that you remember that was kind of really challenging other than that?
I mean, it's a very emotional time. Like, it's so hard to explain because it kind of aligns with the same thing of the relationships that you have with people, because we also have staff that's not, that are not teachers and that are not part of our union. I was also experiencing missing those people, but also almost getting hit by those same people in a car, and also missing the schedule of just seeing your students and seeing them, but then also seeing them cross the picket and feeling really bad about it.
Yeah.
And also the fear that your coworkers were then gonna be broken relationships when they came back, or like fractured.
Yeah.
And that's the one that really hurt me. I cried seeing one of the staff members because I was really missing seeing her during first period.
Yeah.
And I I wonder if she was shocked because I just started bawling and I was like, please take care of our kids. And her response was, well, our kid, like, you know, the kids that we work with together during first period, she's like, well, our kids are not there. Anyways, like up there.
Yeah.
And that high school on the hill, that's what
Yeah.
Skyline is called.
Yeah.
And I at that point, it was weird. What she said and what I said didn't even matter anymore. It was more like we both work with the same students. We both like miss it. And that was just a really hard thing because you just want to go back in the classroom. That's like the reality. You just want to go back. You want to go back to what you know, but you're also sacrificing what you know in order to make it better.
And how would you say you were changed by this, or the people around you in ways you can tell? You know, like what would you say have been the changes as a result of this experience?
I mean, you get to know people on a different level. I think when you have people really stressed out or really kind of pushed into having to strike and fight for their rights, you really get to know who they are by their choices, and you get to know their personality, because their immediate choice of whatever it may be, whatever action it may be, speaks much louder than the impression that you had gotten before,
Right.
where most likely students were just talking about their actions as teachers.
Yeah.
But now you really see their values and their belief system come out.
And what about you?
Yeah.
What changes came for you think?
Being an actual leader, I just want to have a good time with my coworkers and like try to make things exciting and fun, because picketing can be really boring. And I just think everything has like some positive and some fun, and like people can call me like blindly optimist, like a blind optimist when it comes to stuff, but like you make it for what it is. Like you can't just walking around in a circle is is only gonna do you so good. You know, after a while, like of course that it was crazy to know, like, wow, now this is like the time where I need to disseminate information, like who to grab, like, okay, my student, you know, has certain students, like, you know, in order to get students to not go up that hill to school, it's not gonna work if a teacher's like, stop going up that hill.
Right.
You know, we knew that the only way to get to those students is to have the students who want to be there, because I was literally like, just, I know those kids. I had a good relationship with those students, so I would tell them, hey, if you really want your classmates to stay with you, like, just talk to them about why you're doing it.
Right.
You know, see if they're interested or if they kind of understand. But we're also very accepting if a student had to go up the hill for their own reason. Again, I always gave them that choice. So when it came to me and learning about who I was, it made me realize, like, oh, I can lead. I actually also have power. And I have a voice, and it's worth a try as to my decision and like my thoughts on how to do something. Let's just try it, because honestly, I've never picketed, and then talking to everyone else, they're like, we've never done this before. And it's like, okay, good. As a teacher, we're gonna figure this all out. And then you start to really basically organize. And honestly, that's mainly what teachers do. They try and organize they problem solve what you've just given them in order to break it down and most likely teach it to someone else.
Right.
Well, last weekend, I'm sorry, and there was a settlement between the union and the district. So you had to all vote as a school, no? And decide if you were going to settle or not. I mean, individually, all of us you all had to vote. And you voted no, right?
Yeah, I had voted no.
So, why did you vote no? This is what we want to know, because a lot of people voted yes, and you voted no. And we had a teacher prior to this, for the LA strike who voted no as well, and she had given us her reasons, and she felt alone and isolated. But I want to hear your experience. What was it? Why did you vote no? Why did you not want to settle?
So it's very interesting. When I had gotten word as to what the tentative agreement looked like, initially I was like, yes, that's great. You know, they framed it as a historic strike, and it's gonna stay a historic strike.
Yeah.
But
How many days did you all go on strike? I'm sorry. Okay.
7. Yeah, I was only there for 6. I missed the Friday, that last day, and I kind of like had a feeling. I had planned an out-of-state trip in November, so I had no idea that we were gonna strike on that for that amount of time, or whatever, this month, whatever it may be. And it was hard for me knowing that I wasn't going to be there for that last day, and I didn't know it was going to be the last day, right? Because I was actually sleeping at some point, and when people were talking about the tentative agreement, and I had gotten a phone call, and they were like, oh my gosh, it's over. And I checked all these like Instagram stories, and I like checked Instagram Live, but I was like, why are they still picketing? And I was so impressed by my coworkers. I was so impressed by like just the overall work of whoever was picketing, because it was not only our teachers, but it was also SEIU,
Classified.
yeah, our classified workers. And I originally, when I saw the stories, when I saw all of that, it was framed as a positive. And when I was looking at that, I was like, yeah, okay, I can understand. I can get with that. Like, it's looking pretty good. And then they're like, here's the document. Read it. And I was like, okay. And I was in my Airbnb in Arizona, and I was reading it, and I was like, wait, they did something that I didn't like, because it's all like bold and crossed out and underlined, and then the one that's crossed out means that it's been omitted.
Right.
And I was really disappointed by restorative justice. They had omitted it, and then because originally they wanted to pull the funds from Oakland Police Department. That's what their original intent was. And I was all for it. That makes so much sense. Restorative justice has really helped the school system in lowering suspension rate, in helping our students with trauma. And all of a sudden it became, oh, you only get it for professional development. Oh, it's very minimal. There's no actual program to how I felt, the way that it's written. And what we've been told, like us teachers, and kind of through the network of educators and people who help the youth, that 20 positions of restorative justice had been cut during that Board of Education meeting. And so I was pretty upset. Restorative justice just like makes such a big difference. And another reason why I'd said no. So restorative justice has now been just like, what is that word?
Undermined.
Well, consolidated.
Yeah,
Kind of removed.
it was like consolidated to the point where it was so minimal, the requirement of restorative justice in the school system, and that's very upsetting. Another thing would be our nurses. So in my personal experience with students, has been in regards to having students have allergies to clay. And they exist. Like, as much as the ceramics world is like, no, you can't be allergic to clay for whatever reason. Well, guess what? My students like can be allergic to it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it's not heavy. It's not like a lot of students, but it's enough for me to be a little worried about what happens to my students when it comes to having an allergic reaction. And again, I teach ceramics, and so a lot of my students in general, throughout the Oakland school system, they have asthma. And knowing that we have one nurse, and it feels like 1.5 nurse, I believe we have we literally have one nurse for about 1,700 kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at Skyline as sometimes having about 1,600 students a day on average, and there's only one nurse, and they also help our SPED population, which would be our students with special needs. And it's just a lot of work, and they get spread thin, and I've had it where students are like, hey, it's first period, it's 8 a.m., I don't feel well, can I go to the nurse? I'm like, of course you can, I'll write them a pass. And they come back and they're like, the nurse isn't gonna come in until 8:30. And they're just like in the back. I try to give them tea. I don't even know what to do. I'm like, I'm sorry, honey, I don't know. You know, and it just, the nurses, they matter a lot to our students. And it just feels, it's frustrating because the way that it has been is just normalized. It's like, oh, this is just how it is every day.
Right.
You know, that's not what we want. We don't want it to be just okay that our nurses have 1,700 students to their load. Why else? Moratorium on charter schools. And I understand that it is a Board of Education thing, but I mean, there should have been more of a cap. I know something just happened with Gavin Newsom and assigning, but I'm like, my brain can't really remember all of it right now. But I know that was a good thing, and that happened after. But it's we also have a moratorium on school closures, and that really, you know, it's hard because I'm glad that it's there, but it's also like, what is our next step? And that's just frustrating. I don't know, and I think that's why it's really hard for me, is I don't know what we could have had on our tentative agreement. I don't know what we could have made of our contract until we got it. And right there is like knowledge and education that I wasn't given at all until the strike has happened. So I didn't know, supposedly, that these were non-negotiables.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And that's very frustrating to be behind a cause that you think you can like move forward with, but then you're later told, oh yeah, that was never even like on the table as an option. And that was really hard because I mean, like, as a teacher and as someone who cares a lot about education, those were your goals, and you somewhat got it, but you don't even know. It's so unsure. Yeah, so that's why I voted no. And also the belief that, again, what people can say is like very optimistic, is that maybe things could have been more, but how would you know? You know what I mean? You could never know because we stopped. But
and you were ready to carry on.
I was, yeah, I was ready. And honestly, again, like being a teacher and being like, hey, we've done this for 1 week. We can understand now what we've done wrong, what we can do better, and how we can better other people's picket lines, help solidarity schools, get more students out here, because it was actually growing.
Yeah.
We were getting a few less teachers for different reasons, but we were also getting back teachers. Like, it was a weird, like, revolving door. Like, some teachers got really sick, and then some teachers had gotten sick in the beginning and then came to the picket line later because they felt better. You know what I mean? So it was like a swap where it's like, our numbers didn't even dwindle as much as we had thought, you know, and we were getting more and more students, way more students. It was like plus 10 almost every day, closer to about Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Right.
And I think, yeah, that really was an amazing experience. We had so many supporters from the community. I mean, y'all came out, and I'm so grateful. Like, SFUSD, like, I actually cried because, well, I cried a lot, but but I cried during one of the rallies because I saw someone who helped me in my first year teaching who really supported me, and he's from Bessie Carmichael. Oh my gosh, no, sorry, Thurgood Marshall. Sorry, I met someone else from Bessie Carmichael on Monday. And yeah, Thurgood Marshall. And I saw him and I just we hugged, and I hadn't seen him in 2 years, and I just started crying. And I was like, I'm so sorry. He's my brother's really good friend, so that's how we connected.
And in LA, there was a lot of anger about the process. They were very rushed. Can you say your feelings? Can you describe the process of the TA discussion, debate? Do you feel it was a good process? What were its strengths? How do you assess that process?
Yeah. So because I was in Arizona, and honestly, I wasn't the only person that was like off somewhere else. I mean, we had teachers that live in Brentwood, that live in Tracy, that live in Stockton, just to like come over to Oakland. And now you're asking us on a Sunday to come out and vote. That was pretty ridiculous. We were all really upset.
Yeah.
And just having 24 hours to read the tentative agreement and then being like, oh, you have a little more because you're not voting until Sunday. And we're like, oh my gosh. We are all in debates on Saturday. The union had a rep council meetup and like a voting on Saturday, and I couldn't even be there for any of it. I was constantly just like communicating with everyone through text, and we obviously couldn't have like Instagram stories or something on that one, but there was just so much talk, and I again was just so frustrated with the idea that I couldn't be there, and it was time sensitive. Like it was so quick.
Yeah.
So instead I actually got myself to do other things. I started reading a bunch of articles online and realizing that there were a lot of incorrect information. And so I went Saturday night calling like different news media outlets to be like, hi, this is a teacher from Oakland and your information is wrong. And some of them were really rude, like just letting you know that we got it from our own source and blah blah. And I was like, your source is wrong. And so it was just, it's like, I didn't know what else to do with myself. I couldn't get myself out of Arizona as quickly as possible because I also lost money during the strike. So I wasn't going to spend like that much money. But I also knew for sure that I couldn't pass up this vote. I couldn't at all. I refused it to pass up the chance to vote on something that I had blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
How was your relationship with other teachers that voted for yes? You must have had colleagues that voted yes.
Oh yeah, of course.
What was the contention or the disagreement or friendly disagreement or even just, I don't know. Yes. What was it like with them?
It was really hard because their responses made sense. Of course, it made sense.
To vote yes?
Yeah, of course. It was understandable.
It was understandable.
Yeah, like, and that's why I was like, it makes sense because I can understand their perspective.
Because there was a wage increase that was closer to what the union had asked for.
Yes.
There was at least formally a
over 4 years
class size reduction of some sort, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
There were some things that were in it that you could say, oh, we got this.
Yeah, it's always like, oh, here's just a little.
Yeah.
And that's good enough, right? And that's the thing. It's not good enough. It's just not. Honestly, a lot of my coworkers were saying, and I feel them. I totally understand that this was a very difficult agreement. It was to look at, and you can weigh it as really. I mean, it was just so hard for a lot of us. Because we understood that a lot of it was there, but it was like small little crumbs, small little increments. And I'll be honest, to me personally, right? This is all coming from just a personal point of view, that the loss of money was really hard on a lot of teachers, whether they have a family or not, because of the cost of living, because of all of that. That was really hard. The fact that it was framed as a win And the district had immediately called students. Our morale it went down so low that, if we went back on the picket, it would be much harder work to get kids to go home and to get people to understand. So honestly, it was a huge loss when they announced it already. Like it was just like the morale, that just the way that it was executed, the morale was killed terribly. But that's also why I think for me, I knew that if we were to actually go yes, I had a game plan, like that, I don't mean go yes, but I mean as in if it was going to say yes or if it was going to say no. We had a huge game plan for if the tentative agreement said no and we continued to strike, that a lot of us knew that we would have to bolster up that morale so quickly.
For that Monday. Because we wouldn't have known until 8 p.m. at night, right? So for me, the understanding and the empathy for my coworkers that said and that decided yes, was always going to be there. That's just kind of who I am. And, I think you can kind of hear it from when I talk about the picket, like.
So you were just telling us how the morale, the emotion, the feeling of the outcome of the tentative agreement that was done between the union and the district. What was that like, the climate after the outcome was revealed?
It was revealed so late in the evening that
on Sunday, you're saying?
On Sunday evening, it was revealed so late on Sunday evening that the main outlet that I received a lot of the reactions was social media. And that was frustrating because at that point it became a teacher versus student. There were so many students that were like, you sold us out, all you wanted was a raise, and you just did it for the money, you used us for the last week and a half.
This is students.
These are students speaking. And that's, again, I was like, that is understandable, that I can understand where students are coming from.
Well, there's truth to it when you don't actually go the whole way and fight for the things you say you're going to fight for.
Yeah.
And which is what you thought your union was going to do. They said it was off the table all along. I don't believe that's true. I believe if the strike continues, you can get that stuff on the table, but whatever.
Yeah, we had talked about it earlier. It's just like the Board of Education, aren't they run by the district? Isn't the district the highest level in that sense? Because now we're talking about mismanagement of money. It's like, the fact that restorative justice was proposed to have their program funded taken from the OPD is just such it speaks volumes as to what the district's intent is, and their desire to do a certain thing to our students, which would be, yes, we're going to take these really important programs away.
Yeah.
And so knowing that our students felt betrayed was frustrating. And the fact that I felt for myself betrayed by my union. And that was hard because you'll go for it because you feel righteous. That is your desire to help. The feeling of this cause is why I am doing this, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm behind it, and I sacrificed a lot. You want people to feel the same way, that you're upset that someone would be voting against you, because then you do question their values and their understanding. But the reality is that we had to open a dialogue about it, and I can't make assumptions until, of course everyone can. There's not that's normal for anyone to make an assumption. But what I push to not only my students, but of course to other teachers, is the idea of listening to why people have voted yes. And I wasn't at any of the face-to-face debates, which really frustrated me. But I was on very long email chains, and they were extremely long.
Were they contentious?
What do you mean by contentious?
Were there outbursts of anger, maybe again? Like, were there feelings of maybe sides? You know, people taking sides, and potentially also forming what, like, groups of I'm on this side, you're on that side, sort of.
Yeah. There wasn't. I mean, it's so hard because when you read into something, you just don't understand the tone sometimes, and that was frustrating. But I tried to remember that all of these people were on the picket,
Right.
and that I at that point when I was reading it. It takes me a little bit to be like, okay, stop being so emotional, and assuming something of their tone. And I kind of sat with it, and I think Sunday morning, when I had received more emails, I was able to kind of sit with it and think more about it, and realize that all of the yes votes were also pointing out in a way that if the vote was to go not their way, that they were not going to picket. Like they were like withholding, they weren't negatively doing it. They weren't like, I will not picket. It's like, again, it was an email. They're all emails. Like, so when you read it, you just know basically that person is saying, I will not stand with you, And when we would read someone arguing no, there was nothing like negative. They weren't like, oh, I hate you, or you know what I mean. There's nothing like, I don't like this, I don't like that about you or whatever. Because it's hard to do that when you're trying to vote for no, because you're not gonna, you know what I mean? At that point, that's like more on a personal relationship level. While when people are saying yes to the tentative agreement, you can, right? And if the majority says no, yes has a little more power at that point. That's why it was just a weird relationship with the tentative agreement. Does that make sense? I hope I'm like making sense, because they can
withhold they can basically say, we're voting yes, and we're going to try to deflate your balloon by saying, whatever comes of this, I'm not joining your picket line on Monday. So which can then start to draw from the support for no.
Yes. Yeah. And that was really tough, because again, that brings me back to morale. It was already shot to begin with when it came to the announcement of the tentative agreement. And knowing that teachers that were going to vote yes were sort of saying like, we're going to, we can't. And some people had, of course, good reasons. They were losing a lot of money. They could not do it anymore with the high cost of living here. And the fact that I wish I could say more about it, but that was just like a huge worry.
Yeah. Looking back on it, I do think the leadership organized essentially the yes vote, with its statements of, we've got this great agreement, the pickets are coming down. That hurts you. But if you look back on it, is there a way you would have wanted your leadership to handle this process differently? What are some of the things you would have wanted to see different?
Definitely not calling off pickets at that point. The whole point of that meeting was
Which meeting?
Oh, excuse me. The Board of Education meeting on Friday, for what is now considered to be that last day of that strike.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have called off pickets. They just shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. They should have completed that evening. And it
Because you could have been on the picket line on Monday and then in that afternoon read over a tentative agreement, look at it, discuss it with your colleagues. Legally, you could be discussing it with people at Skyline. Things like that.
For it to have happened on Monday.
Yeah, you could have, it seems to me you could have just as easily had the picket on Monday and actually been allowed a process of it Monday or even Tuesday. It took them 1.5 years to like come to this point, right?
Yeah, yes.
Suddenly they want to rush to this thing, so
Yeah.
give yourself some time to actually look at this together.
Yeah. I still don't understand why it was just such like a quick turnover. Excuse me. That was also another reason why we were all very upset because, excuse me again, only 70% of the union voted as like a whole, and that's very frustrating because I believe when we voted to strike, it was 85%.
That's correct.
Yeah, and
85% of people voted.
85%
And it was
had voted,
95%
and it was
voted to
95%.
strike.
Yeah, and so that in itself could have just easily maybe sway right the result, but we're not there anymore. But definitely, I think the framing, just that narrative to say that it was a win automatically. It's just dangerous language at that point.
Yeah.
You cannot say that until the people that you serve, your
Right.
actual union members,
The people
look
who've
at
been
it.
fighting for this are the ones who have to decide whether this is a win or not.
Exactly. And that was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Was there any reconciliation, restorative justice, any conversations afterward at your school? Any sort of dialogue that was continuous, anything to patch up some of that hurt, some of maybe the disagreements, or did everyone just return back to work?
Oh gosh, yeah. Everyone just returned back. I mean, I was guilty for Monday to go to that Board of Education meeting. I felt guilty in the sense where I couldn't welcome the kids back, but I have social media and I vlog on my Instagram of why I wasn't there on Monday, and for letting my students know I apologize that I'm not there. But this Board of Education meeting that the picket line had shut down twice already had now been scheduled for 10:30 a.m. on a Monday, which is very anti-democratic and for me unethical to have done. And so I made the decision to do a sick out, and I had offered other teachers if they could support because we wanted to support our students. And
this is the Board of Ed meeting where they made the decision to make those cuts to some of the student resources, restorative justice. They also cut 100 classified positions, if I'm right. $22 million in cuts was made on that Monday.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. It's just crazy. And yes, so that Monday I wasn't there to welcome my students, but I think that action of knowing for me that I was going to be at that Board of Education instead of school felt the best, and it felt right because I was still continuing the fight. It wasn't over, you know what I mean? And I couldn't, I knew that if I was to go into work that day on Monday and just like be sitting there, I would feel like a terrible person for me personally. So I made that choice to do a sick out that day. Other teachers actually were there, and teachers that voted yes were there, and that in itself for me means that just because you voted yes, just because you voted no, it's not like you don't care about the kids. Honestly, I never connected that at all of being like, if you voted yes, that means you don't care about the kids. No,
right.
That's if you don't care about the kids, you just shouldn't be a teacher. And that's the reality, and that's why I loved being there with the kids that day, knowing that some of those teachers there had voted yes, but we're going to be out there anyways. to support our students. So I'd love for us to have a restorative justice circle for teachers as teachers, because I think teachers have always been sort of fractured even before the strike, and now some of them are even more frustrated with each other, and but you know, it is, for me personally, more difficult to handle adults than teenagers. The teenagers, oh, they're okay. Like, they were really upset in the beginning. Like, my gosh, I was like, you guys are walking in here with such negative energy. And they would be all snappy with me. Like, one student was like, oh, so fancy, I went to a music festival. And I was like, honey, I like planned it way before. Like, I wasn't like, oh, my 11%, like, doing this, you know? I was like, I don't understand.
11% doing this.
Well, and the 11% raise is over a 4-year period.
Yeah.
Which comes out to about, what, 2.5% per year, which is less than cost of living.
It's so tricky too, because, like, I don't know. That's also something that I realized, like, coming out of this, like, oh, I'm not, like, as politically active, you know, and now that's all I want to be. And all I want to do now is, like, raise up my kids to be politically active and to be knowledgeable, because when I have a student telling me that I can't spend my money on what I want to spend it on, like, you know, it's just like you gotta, you work so hard being a teacher, you work so hard being anything,
some rest,
you should. Yeah, you need some fun and something for your life, and then the kids are like, oh, you just, it's a weird too, because, like, being a teacher, it's just this total, like, don't you just self-sacrifice all the time? It's okay that you do that, you chose that. Like, no, it shouldn't be okay for me to suffer. Just, like, I'm not doing charity work. This isn't, I love this job, but it doesn't also mean because I love it, I'm going to self-sacrifice for it.
Or in elementary, the children will think that you live at the school.
Yeah. My students, I think that's also something as a teacher I had to remember. And that I had to remind, I didn't mean that I had to remember, but I have to remember to remind my kids that I'm human. Like, I literally, right before the strike, I'd never been so upset with my kids. I remember closing my laptop and being like, do you know how patient I'm being with you? I'm being so patient right now. And I had yelled because a student had looked up at me and was like, what are you talking about? You made us do this paperwork, right? And I was like, yes, I did. Well, why aren't you collecting it right now? Because you're telling me I'm on my phone. I'm done with it. Let me give it to you now. And I was like, you've been on your phone for 20 minutes and I asked you for this 90-minute period of a block to, like, get off of it 20 minutes ago. And I let you be on it for the 20 minutes. I come here telling you to get off of it and you're yelling at me. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going on strike for you. It's hard now because I want to revel in what I had done. I want to, like, share it with my kids, to be like, I had a lot of fun out there, you know, and I really truly did do it for you without really realizing that, like, you would feel this way when I came back, and that I myself would feel really betrayed and sad. So it's hard to, like, want to raise up all of the experiences that I've had without having the kids feel like they've been used and betrayed, you know? Because it was such a good experience. It was, I mean, we had teachers going there at 4:30 in the morning just to stop deliveries. They picketed that early in the morning. And it's just...
It's called commitment, huh?
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, it's something to watch.
It's just like... I want to be able to, like, show the kids that without them just being like, oh, there was a time when you, like, sold us out. You know? It's like, I'm waiting for that time. Because right now it's a little confusing for them.
Well, what do you think are the next steps now for the union. There's a lot of issues. There are school closures. You're still facing them after August 1st. Charter schools may be up there. Class sizes are still a problem. There aren't the nurses. So what do you see as the kinds of things you feel like your colleagues, your union's going to have to do in the coming months?
Yeah. We're looking at the Board of Education as our target, basically. You know, just really going there, showing that we have power, showing that we care now. Because the issue too, my gosh, there's so many layers to it. Because I'm a third-year teacher, my first 2 years, I had no idea what I was doing as a teacher. I had to figure that out. That was like that was my goal and my, you know, that's what I knew I had to do. I wasn't involved in any of the politics. And because there is such a high turnover rate of teachers, that's all you keep doing. That's all you keep seeing teachers do. And then it kind of resets again. And so not a lot of teachers become politically active. You know, a lot of the board meetings, if you look at videos of them, don't have that many teachers there because they, you know, I didn't know about Board of Education until this year. And that's due to the fact that as a teacher, you're just trying to learn how to teach, you know? You don't get politically active until you're really comfortable with what your classroom looks like, because your focus now can be outside of the classroom a little more. And that's my goal is for me to be politically active and also to activate my coworkers in that dialogue and in that like activism and participation. And students, oh my gosh, students, they're so strong. They have so much voice, they have so much power, especially with social media. It's crazy. I mean, that just showing that Sunday night when we were going to do that Board of Education meeting on Monday, how fast they just got that word out, and how quickly they got students saying, hell yeah, I'll do that. But of course you also have students who are just like, well, I'm not going to go to school. But at the same time, that's the same thing on the picket. You have people who are like, okay, I'm like not going to cross it, but I'm also not going to walk it.
Right.
And you're like, not the thing that I would want to do for me, but that still helps our cause, I guess, you know? So there's like levels of participation that is necessary, you know, because not every single person is going to be like me, where, oh my God, I want to do like everything, you know, but also, I have thankfully Harley, who's just straight up like, stay in your lane. I'm like, oh yeah, and you stay in my lane, you know. And then I have my coworkers who are like, hey, let me help you with doing these things because I can see that it's stressful on you.
Right.
And another goal is exactly that, is finding people who will do those roles alongside me, with me.
Right.
So I spoke to two of my coworkers, and we both want to be a rep for our school, for the union. Yeah. Also, I'm being asked to be a liaison between students and the union, which is kind of tricky because I'm just going to disclose this here. But me, I tend to go a little more rogue. I don't like being held down by like
that's the right way to be. That's the right way to be.
So, I mean, of course, I'm like a rule follower when it comes to being a teacher. I'm not going to be like, hey, guys, let's do illegal things. But I also admitted when we were doing the teacher sick out, I was like, kids, this is illegal. And I am doing this because it's a statement, you know, but I also remind them, like, obviously, please don't do all these illegal things because I just said I was doing something illegal, because this is the more positive change. It's for a change, right? You know. What other steps? Students, raising up student voices. We are actually having students meet tomorrow night for next steps for them. And I'm an adult ally, so my main goal is to make sure that they are doing it within the means of what it would look like. For example, during the student sick out, a lot of the kids were like, we're going to leave campus. And I was like, please don't leave campus because that's dangerous. And it's just very dangerous, very dangerous. So as an adult ally, again, that becomes more like, I'm protective of you, but I also want you to experience things. And we sometimes come in as a voice of reason, but we are not the ones who are saying, do this and do that. And, because at that point, we're impressing, like, we're putting upon them influences that actually they don't need it, for one thing, but also that is not legal.
I think we got two more questions. One is on this show we talk about like socialism, capitalism, revolution, working class. Those things come up a lot. Have in the political journey you've taken in the last 3 or 4 months or something like that. What are some things? How do those issues come up for you in terms of any of those things? Working class, socialism, capitalism, revolution.
Yeah. Honestly, it comes from a place of like history and my history, how it aligns with everyone else's history and their story. And like, for example, for me, it comes from an immigrant family. It comes from my parents coming from the Philippines. My dad came here and worked the fields. And there's actually footage of me on Instagram. It's my own footage, but it's like out there.
Do you want to plug in your Instagram?
Oh yeah, sure. Mine is Dsalonga, which would be Dsalonga.
All right. Yeah.
Wait, did I even spell that right? I'm sorry. Dsalonga.
I think you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was like, oh no.
But there is a picture of you circulating the internet. You're saying.
Oh, yeah. There's like a few. Oh my god. Oh, there's so many photos of me with the bullhorn and like just like screaming. I can't seem to learn how to use an amplifying device without yelling. So I guess that's why people are always like, gosh, I'm actually really loud without it. So that's really amazing. But there is footage of me with Isang Baksak, which is one rise, one fall. And that's Tagalog, and that's my family's like native tongue. And it means a lot to me that my parents have been like behind this the whole time, just
they were working class.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah. And it's scary because knowing that capitalism and privatization of almost everything now has created a huge divide of like lower class and high class and middle, like upper class, and sorry, not higher class, but upper, mid, and lower class. It's scary that that's dwindling right in the middle. It's dwindling. I guess that's part of also who I am, is just this idea of balance. There always needs to be a balance, and we're losing it right now. It frustrates me because I feel like it is also dwindling. Again, I'm like an emotional person. It's dwindling from empathy and understanding of other people's experiences because it's such a large divide now. It brings out such negativity in people. Also, you gotta admit, there's higher crime when it comes to that divide, because I just see it. I'm not necessarily talking from like there's these studies. You see the desperation. In the classrooms and in the education system, the desperation is coming out a lot. And I don't know, it's just much, I think it's kind of hard for me to explain without some time. So I can't fully explain that part. But yeah, coming from my family of working middle class, and being a teacher, there's just not much I can say about it aside from there is no other way to fight the injustices than to focus on where I'm at in middle class and how to rise the middle class back into existence.
And the role of the strike.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Like that is my way of showing that we still exist and that we deserve to be seen, that we deserve to live here in where where we all teach, and where, I mean, gosh, it's crazy. Gentrification too is just like, it happens so quickly too. For me personally, coming from a native of San Francisco,
You saw it happening.
yeah, I got to see it firsthand.
What neighborhood did you grow up in?
Ingleside.
Uh-huh.
I mean, for me, I thought it was quick because the homes in my area were originally black families, and all of a sudden, they were vacant. My neighbor across from my house, he had passed away. Then his wife had passed. Then the family didn't know what to do with the house. They sold it. Now we're looking at 4 to 6 people who live there who go to SF State, which I understand, but it changes the culture of my neighborhood, and it's sad because that's not just that house across the street. It's the other 5 houses down the way, and then there's no community anymore. So that's really scary, because if you don't have community, you're not. It's just, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like, there's no community. It's sad.
Well, are there any other things you feel like you want to share about the experience, about being on strike? Now that it's ended, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, the humanizing of the experience. It's really hard to humanize an experience when you have the news media covering and putting all this information out, which I understand, that's like their job. I think social media has been a huge humanizer of this experience, and it's tough too, because social media can distort things as well. So it's made me realize that I need to find the source, and that's sometimes really hard, sometimes really difficult. So I think maybe you can hear it also in my language that I say, like, personally for me, for me.
Right.
Because I can't speak for all teachers, and it was really hard doing that. It was hard going to, experiencing all of this and then sort of being the face of it and being worried that I'm not doing it justice, or I'm not doing good by my fellow teachers or my students. But then again, that was also what moved me, was that they did trust me to do it, and they heard me out to do it. I didn't get to mention this, but for the tentative agreement, when we were doing all those email chains, I never said what I was going to vote. I didn't. What I did say was the reminder of unity, and that we have the option in the democracy of the process to say yes or to say no. And that no matter what, if it was a yes or a no, was that we stood on that picket line together. We stood together as striking teachers, whether or not you picketed, but that our goal is all the same, is to be with the students, in the sense of like, they're fighting for a better education for them. That was constantly my message to my coworkers. I became sort of that bridge for a lot of my coworkers, and I tried my best to make sure prior to the strike that they weren't uncomfortable, because some of them, told me I might have to cross. I was like, that's fine. But then you also have people who are like, if you cross, you are dead to me. And so I tried to make amends all the time, at least to say that you have someone who is not going to judge you for crossing. I also made amends with the the front house, like not the front house, excuse me, that's a restaurant. The front office staff and with my administration. Prior to striking, I gave them gifts, and not to be like, here's gifts, like, you know, throwing a bunch of like physical things at them. It was more like, you know, sort of that like peace offering to say like, we still care about you. Like, we're still a family.
Was Edmund supportive?
Yes. Yeah. And also no.
Right.
Like, you have both. Like, again, you have both. Like, they were still doing their job, and they were still like, they were still doing their job. I think we all knew that there was going to be some opposition, in the sense where it's like constantly emailing saying school is happening, and we're like, oh shit. What does that mean for us when we're on the picket line the next day? Because it was like, that was always like an issue for us. Like, what is it going to look like every time? What was that email going to look like? And a lot of us were not checking our OUSD emails. So we didn't know sometimes what they were receiving, except like, I don't know. For me, I was like, I don't want to digitally cross the picket line, but, you know, but students would be like, we were told that there's school. And literally some kids were like, listen to this message. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. And they'd be like, listen, they're saying that there's school. And I was like, you know,
that could potentially disrupt.
they were doing that every day.
They were trying to break the strike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and that was also the district, and that is the admin's job, is to be like, we are open, you know? So, but they also were really accommodating at times. They for certain deliveries, they would contact me and they'd be like, hey, there's a delivery that we're looking at. And I was like, we cannot accommodate. Like, there's certain things that we can, and there's certain things that we cannot. Like, we accommodated for our moderate to severe SPED students, because there was just no other way, and we understood that. But also, we held hard lines, you know, and we made that clear.
Well, that's it for me.
Thank you.
Donna, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming here and sharing this stuff with us.
Yeah.
It's like a it is a kind of a document of your experience on the strike, I think. So I'm kind of excited to have that.
Yeah, thank you for the
Donna.
experience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are going to wrap up just quickly by saying what we're going to have our listeners, where they can find us. But before I do that, the reason why I'm saying this, do you want to plug in your account again?
Oh yeah. So for my Instagram account, it's mainly for students. But like I also like to humanize me as a teacher. I have like what I do outside of the classroom, which is rock climbing, and I have a cat that I like love. So, you know, like I try and share that with my kids, because yeah, it's so sweet. They actually like are very interactive about it. So I like that when they come to me the next day, they're like, I watched your story. I'm like, ugh. But you know, it's very, yeah, that's just
nice.
Humanizing. So that's my Instagram handle is Dsalonga. So it's DSALONGA. And then
Do you have a vlog?
yeah, well, so I technically video log on that. I vlog on that with the stories.
So you're very used to this camera.
Yeah, I am.
You're not. That's why you're very.
Yeah, I am. It's usually in my car. Yeah, it's usually in my car, like with the little stand, and then I like turn on the light, and I'm like, hi. I even have it where I drew my heart on. So this is not a real. My students think it's a tattoo.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah. Can I say what this is actually about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this started originally.
The heart on your.
On my right side. Yeah. It started because I don't actually really know why I chose to draw something on my face. I just wanted to have a heart somewhere. And
that's how art people are now.
yeah, like I'm heavily tattooed. And my students forget that sometimes. So when I like take off a sweater, they're like, oh my God. But I wanted something very outward. So my face was like a good idea. And for the students, for when we started the information of like putting it out there that I was going to have a teacher, that we're going to have a teacher sick out, I started drawing on my face a red heart and coloring it in, and I just like was like, it's cute. In my classroom, every time I like put an exclamation point, it's usually with a heart. Or I have what is it called? Oh, my whiteboard. When I'm listing something, it's usually a heart as the little list for a bullet point. And so it just became a thing for me because I love my students. And I remind them, I'm always like, I love you as a student. And it means a lot of like that caring to them and that like giving an expression of your
and openness
of your being. Yeah.
So so it's not a separate blog, it's a vlog with a V.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's with a V.
Right.
Oh, I saw
yeah,
it's
vlog.
I thought it was traditional blogging, you know, when you used to write.
Oh my gosh, I wish I had the time. I wish I had the time.
No, but you vlog and it's on your Instagram.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram stories. It's so funny because you can tell the kids are like, ugh, we watched all of it. And I was like, ugh, wow. You know, I put one of me eating one time. And the kids were like, why were you doing that? I was like, I wanted to know how it was. Because people eat. Like, they have YouTube videos of it. So I tried it. And the kids, because they interacted with it, I was like, it did affect you. To like watch me eat. And then I had people being like, what are you eating? Like direct messaging me. So in regards to that Instagram, that's like humanizing me as a teacher. Yes. Yeah. And then I run another Instagram that is the political one that has gotten a lot of attention from students. And a student also helps me run it. And he became one of the student leaders. Yeah, so again, student leaders is something else that I think y'all should maybe cover one of these days.
Maybe.
Because it's the same thing as me.
If you recommend one, maybe.
Oh yeah, they're amazing. They organically just like become. It's beautiful. It's so fun, and I guess that's what happened with me. So I can totally recommend someone or a few kids. They're so sweet.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
But the political Instagram is SHS Fight #4 Ed.
There you have it. Maybe we can have that handy.
We can put that on there. Yeah.
Well,
and I'll ask you for some links maybe that I can add to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So no Twitter account, no nothing, just Instagram.
Oh my gosh, the Twitter one is so complicated.
Oh, all right.
So I can definitely like.
You'll give it to Andy.
Yeah, we have a Twitter too, so that helps.
All right. Well, people can find this podcast on iTunes, BitChute, Stitcher, Google Play, and the YouTube channel is you can just search for What's Left. Please rate, review, subscribe, and best of all, share. Thank you, Donna, for being here.
Thank you, Donna.
Oh, yeah.
You have been incredibly just informative, sharing your experience. It's just, it really gives us a different, I think for everyone, if it's not just a news coverage, but it is a personal account from someone.
Right. So that's what I appreciate, and thanks for giving us your time and just being so open. So appreciate it. And it was inspiring to see you out there. You know, it was amazing. So.
All right then. Well, thank you, Donna.
All right. See you next week.
Ciao.